Terror, unveiled at Midnight Mart. It was a rainy Friday evening when I decided to swing by the Midnight Mart to grab a few groceries. The supermarket, usually bustling with activity during the day, now stood mysteriously quiet under the dim, flickering fluorescent lights. The sound of raindrops hitting the roof seemed to amplify the silence, creating an atmosphere that sent shivers down my spine. As I walked down the narrow aisles, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. The shelves were fully stocked, but there was something off about the way the products were arranged. Items seemed to be slightly skewed, as if someone had been hastily putting them back. A sense of unease began to settle in, but I brushed it off as my imagination ran wild in the near, empty store. I continued my shopping, trying to shake off the unease that had settled over me. I rounded a corner and suddenly froze in my tracks. At the end of the aisle, I saw a figure, a tall silhouette dressed in tattered clothes, facing away from me. My heart raced as I watched, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. There was something undeniably off about the way the figure stood perfectly still. Not even the slightest movement. Gathering my courage, I called out, "Hey, are you okay?" No response. I took a step closer, my footsteps echoing through the silence. My gut told me to turn and run, but I couldn't abandon the possibility that someone might be in trouble. As I got closer, I noticed a strange smell, something putrid and foul that made my stomach churn. Finally, I reached the figure and tapped its shoulder. It slowly turned around, and that's when I saw its face. My blood turned to ice. The figure had no face, just smooth, featureless skin stretched over where its features should have been. I stumbled back in horror, a scream caught in my throat. I turned and ran, the sound of its footsteps echoing behind me. The rain outside had turned into a torrential downpour, and I slipped and slid through the aisles, desperately trying to find an exit. As I reached the entrance, the figure was nowhere to be seen, but the smell of decay lingered in the air. I burst out of the supermarket, drenched in rain, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked back one last time, and in the reflection of the glass doors, I caught a glimpse of the figure standing at the end of an aisle, watching me. I drove away, my mind racing with fear and disbelief. The haunting whispers of aisles, unseen. Late one evening, I found myself wandering the aisles of the Twilight Grocer, a place I'd visited countless times before. It was a night like any other, or so I thought. The store was unusually quiet, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead providing an eerie backdrop to my footsteps. I was just about to dismiss the feeling of unease creeping over me when I heard it. A faint whisper, barely audible over the soft music playing in the background. I paused, my heart racing. Maybe it was just a trick of the wind or a distant conversation. But then it came again, unmistakable this time, a hushed voice, like someone speaking in hushed tones just out of earshot. My curiosity got the better of me, and I began to follow the sound. The whispers seemed to guide me, leading me down an aisle I had never noticed before. The shelves were different here, old, dusty, and lined with products I couldn't recognize. The air grew colder, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stepped into a different world entirely. The whispers grew louder, and now I could make out words, fragments of sentences that sent a shiver down my spine. I reached the end of the aisle, and there, standing before me, was a figure. Its back was turned to me, hunched and unmoving. I could hear the whispers emanating from it. I called out, but the figure remained still, as if in a trance. Taking a step closer, I noticed a mirror on the adjacent wall. In the reflection, I saw the figure's face, or what should have been a face. Instead, it was a void, a swirling darkness that seemed to suck in the very light around it. gripped me, and I turned to flee. But as I did, the figure began to turn slowly, its empty gaze fixing upon me. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that echoed in my mind. I stumbled back, my heart pounding as I struggled to escape the aisle. The store around me seemed to warp and twist, the familiar aisles becoming a labyrinth of endless corridors. The whispers followed me, filling the air with their haunting chants. After what felt like an eternity, I burst out of the aisle and into the main section of the supermarket. The fluorescent lights flickered back to life, and the whispers faded into the background. I was drenched in sweat, my breath ragged as I tried to make sense of what had just transpired. The phantom cart, the unseen presence. Picture this. A gloomy evening, rain tapping on the windows of the Crescent Mart. I needed just a few essentials and thought I'd breeze through the store. Little did I know, events were about to veer into the realm of the uncanny. As I strolled down the well-lit aisles, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I glanced around, half expecting to see a curious fellow shopper. But it wasn't that simple. My gaze landed on a shopping cart, abandoned in the middle of the aisle. Odd, right? It's not like you see empty carts just chilling on their own. I moved to push the cart aside, and that's when it happened. The cart jerked back, as if pulled by an invisible force. My heart raced, and I blinked, thinking it was just my imagination. But then it happened again. The cart, moving on its own accord, as if guided by unseen hands. My heart raced as I watched this bizarre display, nerves tingling. I hesitated before the cart. It was as if the cart had a mind of its own. I reached out tentatively, ready to pull it back, but before I could touch it, the cart shot forward with a force that took me by surprise. I stumbled back, watching in disbelief as the cart sped down the aisle, as if someone was pushing it with incredible strength. My mind raced. Was this a prank? A malfunction? Or was there something supernatural at play? Gathering my courage, I followed the cart as it turned the corner into another aisle. The sight that greeted me froze me in my tracks. In the aisle, the cart was now inside a mist that looked like swirling fog. It felt strange and made me both fascinated and really scared. And then, from that mist, I heard a faint whisper, like a faraway voice I had forgotten. My instincts told me to run, but curiosity held me in place. The whisper grew louder, forming words that sent chills down my spine. It spoke of forgotten stories, of lost souls, of a world that existed just beyond our perception. I couldn't make sense of it all. The cart, the mist, the whispers, it was like a puzzle I was never meant to solve. As quickly as it had begun, the mist began to recede, and the cart came to a stop. I stood there, breathless, as the supermarket returned to its normal appearance. The cart now stood still, as innocent as any other cart in the store. It was as if the entire episode had been a dream, a surreal experience that defied explanation. I left the Crescent Mart that night with more questions than answers. So, next time you're at your local supermarket, keep an eye out for the ordinary, because you never know when the extraordinary might reveal itself in the most unexpected ways.